Everyone in the small town knew Ayan as a quiet, hard-working man. He was respectful, kind, and always the one people turned to when they needed help. But behind that calm smile, Ayan carried an ache that he never spoke of. His last relationship had ended without closure. Since then, he avoided getting too close to anyone, afraid that maybe he wasn't enough. Then came Sana, a warm and confident woman who had just moved into the neighborhood. She had a way of lighting up any room she entered, and Ayan found himself noticing her laugh, the way her eyes softened when she spoke to someone kindly, and the little details that others missed. Yet, he told himself to stay quiet, to keep his distance. But life has its own way of pulling people together. One evening, during a community meeting, Sana struggled to lift a heavy box of papers. Without thinking, Ayan stepped forward and helped her. She smiled at him, and in that smile, something inside Ayan shifted. It wasn't just kindness, it was recognition. As if she saw something in him that he had long forgotten about himself. That night, Sana said something that stayed with him. She laughed lightly and whispered, "You know, you don't look like an Ayan. You look like—" She paused, searching. His face then gave him a nickname, one that struck deeper than he expected, and that was just the beginning. Ayan didn't know it yet, but in the days to come, Sana's playful choice of nicknames would open doors in his heart he thought were locked forever. Nicknames that weren't just words, but carried a power he had never understood before, because sometimes the smallest names hold the deepest meanings. When Daniel returned home that evening, his mind wouldn't stop circling around the words. Nicknames. At first, he thought it was childish. After all, weren't nicknames something couples used in their teenage years? But the memory of his wife's smile that afternoon lingered with him like a warm echo. The truth was, Daniel had always been cautious with words. He worked as an accountant, someone who lived by numbers, facts, and neat little rows on a spreadsheet. Yet here he was, realizing that the smallest word, a playful title, a gentle nickname, could awaken something inside his marriage he hadn't seen in years. That night, as they sat down to dinner, he tried it again. His voice came out soft, uncertain, but deliberate. "Thanks for cooking tonight. Sunshine." For a second, silence filled the room. His wife looked at him, her eyebrows lifting in surprise. Daniel's heart skipped a beat, thinking maybe he had said the wrong thing. But then, just like earlier, her lips curved into a smile. This time, it wasn't fleeting. It lingered. And in that smile, Daniel saw something powerful: joy, recognition, affection. It was in that moment he discovered the truth. Nicknames weren't about being silly. They were about creating a private world between two people, a language that said, "You're special to me in a way no one else is." That night, as he lay in bed, Daniel realized this was only the beginning. He had stumbled onto something small yet extraordinary. A secret that women didn't say out loud but deeply appreciated when felt. And so, unknowingly, Daniel was about to uncover not one, not two, but three powerful nicknames that had the ability to change the way his wife looked at him forever. Daniel couldn't help but notice how Eliza's laughter carried a spark whenever he teased her gently. It wasn't mockery, nor was it overbearing. It was playful, respectful, and light. One evening, after she had jokingly accused him of always finding ways to distract her, he leaned closer, a mischievous smile on his face, and said softly, "Well, what can I say, sweet trouble? You make it too easy." The moment those words left his lips, Eliza froze for half a second. Her eyes widened, then she laughed, her cheeks turning a soft shade of pink. She shook her head, trying to mask the warmth rising in her heart, but the nickname had already done its work. It wasn't just a word, It was a reflection of the energy between them. Daniel had found a way to make her feel unique without putting her down, to celebrate her quirks while showing that he was fully present in the moment with her. Sweet Trouble became their private little code. Whenever she teased him back, or when she got caught sneaking the last cookie from the plate, he'd raise an eyebrow and mutter, "Ah, sweet trouble strikes again." Instead of making her feel guilty or embarrassed, it pulled her closer. She started to anticipate the nickname, even crave it. In her mind, it meant Daniel wasn't just paying attention. He was enjoying every small detail of who she was. What Eliza didn't know was that Daniel had chosen the name with care. He understood that a powerful nickname must never belittle. It must amplify the feeling of connection. Sweet Trouble wasn't about flaws. It was about charm. About that delightful spark that makes someone impossible to forget. By now, Daniel could sense the shift between them. Eliza no longer looked at him as just another friend. She began leaning in more when they spoke, holding his gaze a little longer and even playfully calling him out, just so he'd call her Sweet Trouble again. The bond was deepening, not through big gestures, but through the careful use of words that touched her emotions. But Daniel still had one more secret to reveal. One final nickname that carried a weight far stronger than the rest. The kind of name that could turn admiration into something undeniable, something unforgettable. Ethan's world had shifted in ways he never imagined. For weeks, he had been testing the subtle magic of these nicknames, blending them naturally into his conversations with Clara. The changes were small at first, just tiny shifts in the way. She leaned in when he spoke, the warmth that lingered in her eyes or the faint hesitation before she said goodbye, as though she wasn't quite ready to leave his side. But one evening, something happened that changed everything. It was late, and the two of them were walking through their neighborhood after dinner. The night air was cool, and the streets glowed softly under the street lamps. They laughed about little things, their favorite childhood snacks, embarrassing teenage stories, and the world felt lighter than it had in years. For Ethan, this was more than a walk. It was a test of what he had learned, a moment to see if connection could deepen into something lasting. When Clara tripped slightly on an uneven piece of pavement, Ethan caught her hand instinctively. Instead of letting go, she left her hand, in his for a moment longer than necessary. His heart raced. This was the opening. He smiled and softly called her by one of the nicknames she had secretly come to adore. Clara froze, not in discomfort, but in surprise. Her eyes widened, and then a slow, meaningful smile spread across her face. That smile wasn't just appreciation. It was a confession she hadn't spoken aloud. It said, "You understand me in a way others don't." For the rest of the walk, their conversation felt different. It wasn't just playful. It was intimate. Clara's laughter carried a softness. Her voice dropped into gentler tones. And when they finally said goodbye, there was a lingering pause, the kind that only comes when both hearts know something is changing. Ethan lay awake that night, unable to sleep. He realized he had stumbled upon something powerful, not just the nicknames, but the emotional weight they carried. With every word, he was giving Clara a sense of safety, admiration, and belonging. What he didn't know was that Clara was lying, awake too, replaying the moment in her mind, wondering when a friendship had started feeling like something more. Ethan couldn't help but notice the subtle change in Maya's behavior. Each time he used one of the gentle nicknames, her shoulders seemed to relax, her smile came faster, and her eyes lingered on him a little longer. It wasn't about flattery, it was about recognition. She felt seen. One evening, while walking, together through a quiet park, Ethan softly called her Dreamer. It wasn't planned. It simply slipped out. Maya froze for a moment, then turned to him, her eyes moist but glowing. "No one has ever called me that before," she whispered. "It feels like you actually see who I am, not just what I show." That was the moment Ethan realized the truth. Nicknames weren't tricks, they were bridges. They reached into the parts of a person that often stayed hidden. By choosing the right words, spoken with sincerity, he had found a way to touch her heart without forcing it. But with this realization came a new challenge, responsibility. He knew that words carried weight. If he misused them, they could cause pain instead of closeness. He remembered stories of people who felt betrayed when terms of endearment were used carelessly or mockingly. Ethan didn't want that. So instead of rushing, he decided to pay attention more deeply. He listened to the way Maya spoke about her dreams, the way her laughter rose when she was truly happy, and the moments when she fell quiet. He allowed the nicknames to grow naturally out of those moments, like flowers blooming from rich soil. Slowly, he began to understand that what truly made these names powerful wasn't the sound of the word itself. It was the intention behind it. Respect, tenderness, and genuine care turned simple syllables into something unforgettable. And as Maya held his hand tighter that night, Ethan knew he was no longer just experimenting. He was learning the art of emotional connection, step by step. As Daniel reflected on everything he had learned, he realized that the real power of these nicknames wasn't just in the words themselves. It was in the intention behind them. When he called Emma Sunshine, it wasn't a hollow phrase. It came from the way she genuinely lit up his day. When he whispered, "beautiful," it wasn't just flattery. It was an acknowledgement of how much he admired her, inside and out. And when he used angel, it wasn't just sweetness. It was gratitude for how she cared for him selflessly. Truth was, nicknames became meaningful because of the emotion and consistency attached to them. Women didn't just love the words, they loved the feeling that came with them. A nickname, when spoken with sincerity, made a woman feel seen, cherished, and uniquely important. Daniel started to notice something else too. Emma began to use her own nicknames for him. She called him Rock when he supported her during tough days, Hero when he fixed something around the house, and Love when she wanted to make him feel special. Suddenly, the nicknames became a language of their own, a private, intimate exchange that deepened their bond. But here's the secret many men miss. Nicknames only work when they're backed by genuine care, effort, and respect. If someone tries to force them or uses them without true feeling, they fall flat. That's why so many men fail. They think it's about the word, but in reality, it's about the connection. For Daniel and Emma, it wasn't about the nickname itself anymore. It was about the way those little words reminded them of their love story day after day. And in the next part, you'll see the final turning point in Daniel's journey. How these nicknames didn't just strengthen his relationship, but created a level of closeness he never imagined possible. By now, it was clear to everyone watching Alex and Maria's story unfold that nicknames weren't just playful words, they were powerful bridges of intimacy. Each name Alex used carried an emotional weight, showing Maria she was valued in ways beyond the ordinary. When he called her Sunshine, she felt like the source of light in his world. When he called her my queen, she felt respected, admired, and deeply cherished. And when he called her sweetheart, it reminded her of safety, closeness, and warmth, something no one else could give her in quite the same way. Maria often told her friends, "He could give me 1,000 gifts, but the way he calls me by those names makes me feel like the most important woman alive." The beauty of it all was that these nicknames weren't random. They were sincere reflections of how Alex saw her. And that sincerity built a bond so strong that Maria couldn't imagine her life without him. The lesson was undeniable. Sometimes, it's not the big gestures that win hearts, but the small, consistent reminders of love. A simple nickname, spoken with honesty, could leave a woman thinking about you long after the moment has passed. And so, Alex and Maria's story became a reminder to everyone. Choose your words wisely, because the right nickname, used with love, doesn't just touch the ear, it touches the heart. Now imagine, what nickname would make her heart skip a beat? The answer might just change your story forever.